Good morning. It's WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable 25, and worldwide at country.am. And someone was asking me this morning about how to listen on the smartphones. You can download either the TuneIn app, the Simple Radio app, or if you go to our website, I think it plays on most phones now if you just click the play button from our website on your phone. So if you're out mobile, out on the farm or whatever, you can still tune in and take a listen. And we have Sheriff Palmer with us here. Let's see, I haven't seen the sheriff in about 2 weeks now.
I think you've been back in that pattern where you're avoiding me again.
That's right, yeah. Sometimes I get in that area where I avoid the sheriff.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I was on vacation last week, and he had some conference to go to, I believe, didn't he?
I went to the sheriff's conference the week before that, and out at the coast. I know that was a tough conference to go to out at the beach, but...
We both came back a little tanner.
Yeah, it was needful to go out to the beach every summer, though, to all the sheriffs get together. And it's a kind of a family conference. You go out and kind of do things with your family. There's things there at the conference for the family to do, but also you learn some very valuable things while you're there. We got to hear a terrific speech by General Hugh Sheldon that was Joint Chief of Staff under George Bush when the World Trade Centers were attacked. He gave a wonderful speech about leadership through times of crisis and how to lead through those times. We got some very good training on body cameras and the new laws that came out with that, and along a lot of different topics. You have a chance to meet other state representatives. Of course, I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, but we got to hear a couple of political speeches from the governor. He was out campaigning for his reelection, and of course, Attorney General Roy Cooper was there, and he gave his campaign speech for wanting law enforcement support and all those kind of things. But it's good to get around the state and meet all these people and have interactions with them. And anytime you can spend a few minutes just to ask the governor a few questions and get some feedback from him, it's always good to have those capabilities to do that.
I've noticed with this political season, the race for the governor has gotten very, how's the word? They're not the best of friends.
Personal.
Yeah, personal. It's gotten very personal.
Yeah, it has gotten personal
with that race. So
right.
It's going to be interesting to see the outcome of that race.
You know, one thing about our governor too, our current governor Pat McCrory, is there's a lot of things that he may do that people agree with or don't agree with, and I'm not here to campaign for him or anything like that. It's just the fact of that, a lot of the decisions he's made, I think, has really tried to put the North Carolinians' best interest in mind. But, of course, any decision you make or anything you do, you're going to have, like we discussed before there, you have a point, counterpoint to it, and there's always a different side to things and always someone else that has a different point of view or different opinion. And, we can, if we want to sit here, we can make the same argument with Attorney General Roy Cooper, that he's made some good decisions about things and some other things we may not agree with, and may make a fine governor, or somebody else's point of view may not. So right. It's just one of those things. But it has gotten personal. It has gotten personal, I think, with the campaign. But a lot of campaigns do, and through that season it does. But I wish both candidates good luck, and I just look forward to trying to work with whoever wins.
Yeah. I always thought as a kid that we need to explore and celebrate everybody's differences. If we were all exactly the same carbon copy of each other, right. How boring our world would be.
It would be very boring.
We tried to always make people see the same way we believe, but it would be extremely boring if we all agreed.
Right. And it's good to get those different points of view and different opinions about things. And I shared with one of my command staff this morning. They called me and asked me my opinion about a situation that was going on, and I explained to them, my understanding of the law and what the law says, and what was the right way to handle it, the right thing to do about it. But I also told them when I was on the phone in a joking manner, I said, but I've known to be, I have been wrong before. I think once or twice in my life I've been wrong. So we always have to admit the fact that we're not always right. We may have our own beliefs and our own opinions and the way we ought to do things, but I think every one of us can admit that we've been wrong sometime in our life.
And it has to be a little difficult. We have so many laws on the book, and your job is to enforce the laws. And I'm sure there are laws on the books that you probably don't agree with.
There is. And the example that I use for that a lot, especially when the subject of marijuana comes up, you always hear the argument of it ought to be legalized. And, anytime we post anything on Facebook about an arrest of marijuana, I always immediately get flooded with these responses: leave the stoners alone, and you go after some real drug dealers, and and all these kind of things. But the point I use on that about laws I agree with and laws I don't is the fact of that I really do not like or really do not agree with seatbelt laws. I really don't. I know they're there for our safety. I know they're there to protect us, to keep insurance rates down, and to keep our highways safe and all that. But as a red-blooded American male, I feel like that if I want to ride down the road and take a chance on running my head through the windshield, that's my business. It's not the government to tell me I can't do that if that's the chance I want to take. But the illustration I use to people is whether I like it or whether I don't like it, it's the law to wear a seatbelt. And so as I go out here and get my patrol car, as I get my personal vehicle, the first thing I do is reach and get that strap and put my seatbelt on because that's the law. And so what the law says to do. And kind of with the legalization of marijuana and with these other things that people don't agree with, it's still the law. It's the law of North Carolina. It's still our law. And until legislation changes the law, we're going to continue to enforce the law and keep doing what we need to do. So one of the things that we have sworn to do, or I have sworn to do, as sheriff and deputies swear to do, and police officers around the state, is that we swear to uphold the Constitution and the laws of North Carolina. So it really is not a question of whether we agree with the law or disagree. It's the fact of that we have sworn to uphold the law and protect the law. That's what we intend to do.
One of the things I've thought about several times, knowing that you're a sheriff and you've also been pastor of churches,
Right.
A lot of laws and things that you find in the Bible don't always interact with each other. How do you deal with that kind of conflict?
Well, we actually had this conversation in Bible school last night. By the way,
Really?
we're having Bible school at Valleytown and Andrews, so anybody like to come. I'm teaching this adult Sunday school class there, or the Bible school class there at Valleytown. So if you're an adult and you don't go to Bible school or hasn't been to Bible school this year, come on up to Valleytown and enjoy us. I'll teach that adult class and do the best I can to answer whatever questions you have. But that's my little spiel there for advertising.
All right.
But let's go back to the question. And the question was, what do you do when those things don't mesh up? We actually had that discussion last night in our Bible school class. And one of the things that we have to remember is when you go back to what the Bible says about that. Jesus said in the Bible, he said, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's and render unto God what's God's. And so the way to mesh that and the way to look at that is that what the laws of the land are and what the land decides to do, rendered unto the land what the land owns, But we're to give to God what God owns. And what does he own? Of course, he owns everything. He owns the clothes on our back and the shoes on our feet and everything he owns. But basically the point Jesus was getting across was in Scripture was that to give God your heart and your soul. Give him the things that are important. Give him the things that is your essence, your being, who you are. And so the way to kind of mesh those things, as long as the law of the land does not violate what God's law says, then there's not really a contradiction. We're to do whatever the law of the land says. God does not address whether we have a right to bear arms in America or not. That's a law of the land.
Right.
But one of the things that God does address is God addresses thou shalt not commit murder. So if the law of the land changes and says it's okay to have a purge and go out and start killing people, that doesn't mean it's square with God.
You probably have some issues with that, correct?
Right, I would
Okay.
have some issues with that. Not to say that there are not some days I would like to do that, but the fact of the matter is you have to look at what God's laws are and what he says to abide by. And as long as those are not contradictory with the laws of the land, those are the things you look at. There's some things that we don't agree with, and I probably really shouldn't put that out there. But I will go ahead and talk about it. I'm not the person that kind of hides anything. I like to put everything out in the open. But for example, when it comes to homosexuality and those kind of things, my personal opinion, my personal belief is I don't agree with it. I don't understand it. I don't agree with it. Don't like it. I think it violates God's law. But people are protected under domestic violence protective orders. They're protected by the law and what the state says. So therefore, I have to enforce the law of the land. And if someone comes to our office and they're seeking a domestic violence protective order and they're in a homosexual relationship, I can't just look at that and say, I'm not going to enforce that because you're
Right.
homosexual, because I don't agree with it. That it's still the law of the land, and I still have to enforce what the laws of the land are. So I'm going to treat those people with the same respect, the same dignity, the same thing I would with any other person that come in there. And so there's ways to balance that. There's ways to look at that. It's when your personal convictions and your personal heart, when they're asking you to compromise who you are personally,
Right.
those are things that come in contradiction that you have to make a decision on.
One of our liners on our radio station when we play our singing news radio is it says something like, "You don't have to agree with someone to still respect someone."
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
And the thing about it is, not just that topic, but any other topic that you may not agree with, whether it's drug use or whatever it may be. The fact of the matter is, I feel like my belief system and what I believe in my Christian faith is the fact of that I'm not disagreeing with you because I hate you or because I want bad things to happen to you. I'm disagreeing with you because I truly believe this, and I truly believe that what God says, and I truly believe the Bible, and I truly believe this. So the reason I'm in conflict with you and the reason I don't agree with you is because I love you enough to tell you the truth, and I love you enough to want to see good things happen to you. And it's kind of like if you're out here and on the highway and you see a truck barreling down on a kid sitting in the middle of the highway. It's not enough just to say, hey, there's a truck coming and you might want to get out of the road. At some point in time, you're going to love them enough to run out there and try to grab them and jerk them out of the road.
Right.
And it's kind of the same way with our belief systems. And even though you may not agree, you can sit all day and say, I don't believe a truck's coming. I don't believe I'm going to be run over.
Right.
But at some point in time in our belief system as a Christian, you try to run out there and you try to snatch them and grab them out of the truck that's barreling down on top of them. And it's not because I hate you. It's not because I want bad things. It's because I love you enough that I want to see good things happen to you. And I want to see you survive, and I want to see you live.
Well, I've been pondering that. I've been meaning to ask that for a while. How
Right.
if there's any conflicts in your different beliefs and things that you have to enforce with personal beliefs, and now you've answered that.
Well,
so.
one thing too, we need to also understand, and I don't have the solution to everything, and I don't know all the theologies that are out there, and I can't explain them all. But we also have to understand this too, that that if we're honest about things, is that the Christianity that we're experiencing today is not the same Christianity as started out 2,000 years ago. We've changed a lot of things. We've watered a lot of things down. We've looked at things differently with different eyes and different perspectives. Not to say that God's changed or God's different. It's just saying we've done it as humans. And if you look back into Old Testament, and you look back into early church and all that, God commanded people to do things that today would be violation of the law. He commanded Moses to go out and kill over 20-something thousand people and chop their heads off and put them on a pole. If we did that today, you would be considered a crazy person, and go to prison for that. But that was a directive from God to do that. When you look at David and Saul and all these people, they were given by strength by God to go out into war and to go out into battle and fight and kill people and win and be victorious over other nations and other people. And so, a lot of times when we think about this, we say, well, how can you carry a gun and be a Christian? How can you go out and arrest people and take people's liberties and even have to fight people and shoot people and tase people? And how can you do that and still be a Christian? Well, if God gave David the authority and gave him his blessing to go out and kill tens of thousands of people, and Saul killed his thousands, but David tens of thousands, God's not changed. He's still the same God. So, we can go out and protect ourselves and protect our family and protect our communities, and we can go with God's blessing to do that.
Yeah, sometimes you have to take measures to keep other people safe.
Right.
And
and it goes back to, and I know we kind of maybe turned this into a religious program a little bit, but it kind of goes back to where your heart is. If you go back to the Old Testament, you go back to the Ten Commandments, we see on the walls plastered everywhere, thou shalt not kill. If you go back to the original language and you do the original translation on that, it really translates, it doesn't translate thou shalt not kill. What it translates to is thou shalt not commit murder.
right.
And the difference between killing someone and committing murder is what's in your heart,
Right.
whether the malice is there or not, or whether the intent is there or not. And so when you think about the things of God and you think about how it relates to law enforcement and how it relates to society in general, it all comes back to a matter of the heart. It all comes back to where your heart's at and what your desire's at. The Bible tells us that we look at the outward appearance of man, but God looks at the heart. David committed murder. David committed adultery. David committed all these great sins, but God said he's a man after my own heart. So just a little extra religious program there for you today, since we're on Christian radio.
All right. Well, last week
I try to be quiet because when I get started on that, I want to preach for about an hour or so. but I'll get off that for now. We'll go on.
Last week, I was listening to your show with Donna Lynn live.
Right.
I was in Daytona Beach, and you had a very good show last week talking about ways to help. And you gave an example of talking to some lady, and she was talking about she wished that she could get the help, but she didn't have the means.
Right.
And you've got a pretty good response from last week's show.
I did. I've got a lot of good responses. Several people this week has come and talked to me about that show. I've gotten a lot of phone calls at the office this week about it. One of the things is, and I want to reiterate with that, is that, we don't know what the answers are. We don't know what the solutions are. But obviously we need to reevaluate and do things a little differently than what we've done in the past. We're continuing to look at community leaders. We're doing interviews with different people. We've talked with the hospitals. We've talked with recovery groups. We've talked with a lot of different people about this idea and about how to facilitate it. And we've actually got people actively now going out looking for warrants, going out looking for grants and things so that we can find the monies to facilitate these type of things. I actually met this past week and talked with a gentleman who it looks like within the next year or so, we may have some recovery treatment centers here in Murphy that is opening some things up that may help with that recovery process and trying to help some of these people who are going through addictions and different things. So we're trying to put things in play now and put things in order to where we can have resources that are available for these people. But one thing, that I would really like to stress for those people that's out here listening is, we already have resources. We have things here and places here that people can go to, but it's a different situation when you're homeless, or it's a different situation when you don't have transportation or you don't have these things to get around. So if you need to go to Appalachian Counseling and you need to go to, say, Christian Love and get treatment, and say you need to go to Tri-County and get some advice on how to get your affairs straightened out and how to apply for jobs and how to get some training there for that type of thing. And you've got, 5 or 6 different places around the county that you have resources. It's hard to ask someone who's homeless or someone who doesn't have their own transportation and things of that nature to make all these different appointments around the county and to get the help you need by going to all these different places. So the goal here, and when we're looking at these treatment centers and hopefully getting some people in the area that can help with this process, our goal is to try to get it in one place, try to get it under one roof to where people can go to one place and all these resources will come to them and come to where they're at. We have to go where people are at. We can't expect people to come to us. And getting back to the church issue, going back, that's one of the things that we talked to our church about, is that if we just sit every Sunday and just wait for people to come to us, that's where we fail at, and that's where we make mistakes at, because the Bible tells us to go out to the highways and the hedges, go where they're at and compel them to come. Sometimes we just want to sit in our little space, whether it's church, whether it's rehab, whether it's counseling, whether it's job training. We want to sit in our space, and we want everybody to come to us to where we're at. But I think it's up to us to go to the people. It's up to us to go to them.
Yeah. Someone who is homeless, like you said, may not have transportation. They also may not have concept of date and time if they have an appointment somewhere. Right. They may not have a smartphone that reminds them that it's 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. They need to be at this location. So I'm just guessing, if I were homeless, I would probably lose some concept of time and trying to get to an appointment.
You would. And one thing I also want to clarify about this, because a lot of people ask this question about the homeless population. When we think of homeless, we automatically go to thinking about Atlanta or thinking about Asheville or Washington, D.C. or Chattanooga or some of these places where you drive down the street and you see someone laying on the sidewalk in cardboard boxes, that's typically the picture you get when you think of homeless. Mm-hmm. Here in our rural area, when you think of homeless, you typically get the picture of those who are living under bridges or those that's living in a tent somewhere, those that's transient, that's walking around with backpacks on, that has nowhere to go to. That's kind of what we're thinking about when we think about homeless. And we do have that here. But when we talk about homeless, it goes much farther than that into the fact of that what the deputies are seeing, and I had a conversation with Murphy Police Department this past week about this, and they're saying at Murphy Police, is the fact of that we're seeing roaming bands of people, 8, 10, 12 at a time, sometimes more than that are just going from house to house or place to place and are basically just sleeping wherever their head hits that night.
Right.
We do have people who are sleeping in their cars. We do have people who don't have a roof to get under that way, and they're sleeping in their cars out in the woods or out at a campground or in a back alley somewhere. But we have a whole nother population of people who are addicted, who have mental problems and all these different things that are just roaming from place to place, house to house, and living in this basement a while until the people kicks them out, until they go to another house and stay there for a few days till they kick them out and go to this house until they get tired of them there and go back to this place. And so when you think about those people are homeless also. Mm-hmm. Those are people that even though they may be under a roof, they don't have a place of their own, or they don't have a place that's steady or permanent. And so they're just roaming all over the place, just trying to find somewhere to get in out of the hot weather into some air conditioning, or trying in the wintertime, trying to get somewhere where it's warm. And so those people are kind of what we discount, and we don't understand that they're homeless also.
They don't have a physical address, therefore they can't get mail at a reliable location, and it's a huge disruption of how life is conducted. And there's homeless children also.
Right.
Do we have a large population of children that are homeless in our area?
We have some that's considered homeless. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a large population. I don't think it's anything that, that we would say that we have a problem with children that are homeless. Mm-hmm. But if you're like me, if we have one too many.
Right.
And so what we run into a lot of times is kids that's been in and out of foster care to the DSS system, mm-hmm. and that technically by the standards, they're considered homeless. It's not necessarily they don't have anybody take care of them or know where to stay. It's just because of situations and circumstances they're considered homeless. So we do have a certain population of that within the school system, but I don't think it's a great one. I think it's pretty low. Where we're seeing most of our homeless issue is we're seeing, 20-ish to 40-ish, male and female, all races, that are generally strung out on drugs and have or mental issues, and they've lost what they've had in life. Mm-hmm. Maybe living in mom and dad's basement, maybe living with a friend, maybe living with each other, found a place somewhere to hold up. But these are not permanent solutions. These are places that they stay temporarily until they've been in mom and daddy's basement so long, and so many people have come in and out of there, and until mom and dad gets fed up and they can't do this anymore, and mom and dad's about to lose everything they have, so they have to leave there. Right. And then where do you go? You find somebody else's basement to go in for a while. And so when you think about that, even though we may not think about that, we may not classify that in our own mind as homeless, they are truly homeless. They don't have anywhere to go. They don't have a permanent place. They don't have anything of their own. And so when we talk about these issues that are going on, we can't exclude that population. Right. We've got to bring that population in, because that population is really the ones that we're talking about, mm-hmm. That are getting into other criminal activity as far as breaking into homes and stealing things and pawning things in pawn shops and doing these things, just trying to get by, just trying to get some food for the day, just right. trying to, to make some semblance of life for themselves. And then with this population, if someone does get some drugs, or they go to their doctor's appointment and get some pills and things of that nature, just like the young lady I talked to week before last, she made the statement. She said, how do you expect me to stay clean?
Right.
These people are putting this stuff on my face. And for me, in my point of view, life is so bad for me right now. It's a few hours of escape. It's a few hours just to get away from reality. And so, how can we point a finger in their face and blame them for it? So we've got to come up with resources. We've got to come up with ideas. We've got to come up with community solutions to try to help the situation that's going on out there.
It's easy to make a judgment call until you're in that situation yourself.
Right.
And you would try to figure out what decisions you would make. And I realize there's a lot of people that are homeless that have ended there because of some not so wise decisions.
Right.
But homelessness could affect anyone. I mean, if we lose income, how many months could we pay for house payments? We're just very fortunate.
Well, that's why I was just getting ready to say, if you think about this, let's just say, whoever's listening out there today, let's say you go into work today and the boss tells you that, hey, I'm sorry, we've had to cut back, we don't have resources, whatever, so we're laying people off, and you've lost your job, you have no income. How many people out there has a bank account big enough stored that you could last more than a month or two, before you start losing things?
Right.
Now my wife and I has talked about this before. There are things you can do to mitigate those circumstances. When you look, my home, for example, you've got satellite TV, you've got internet access, you've got going out to eat meals, at restaurants and things of that nature that you can cut back on. You don't have to have TV to survive. You can cut it out if you need to. You don't have to have internet. You can cut it out if you need to. There's things you can cut back on to mitigate those things. But I don't know about everybody else out there, but if you're like me, after a couple months with no income, you're in a bad place.
Oh, yeah.
You're in a bad place of losing everything and anything you have. So when you think about this, think about people who maybe have been in a car accident, or maybe have had some type of injury that's caused them to lose their job, or caused them where they can't work. It just, in a very short time, you could go from being on top of the world and having everything to losing everything you have. And so obviously, like you said, there's some people that's lost things because of choices they made and because of bad decisions. But there's also people out there that's lost everything because of circumstances and things that were beyond their control. Yeah. And so we need to try to do what we can to provide those resources for all those people that are out there.
A major medical event can really turn a person's life around.
Even with insurance.
With insurance, yes.
Can. When you think about, most insurances pay 80%, somewhere along in there, some pay a little more, some pay a little less. But you take your average insurance company pays 80% of your hospital bill. What if you had a serious injury and you've been in ICU or the hospital for 6 months or 8 months, and you're racking up, $50,000 a day or $100,000 a day hospital bills, that are out there. Even though the insurance company pays 80% of that, it don't take long to take everything else you have to pay for it. And my dad, when he got sick, he was in the hospital for the most part of about 3 years. Was in the hospital. And so when you start racking up those kind of hospital bills, even though insurance pays 80%, there's still a lot left to pay at the end of that.
Mm-hmm. I know we have a great community that we live in, a lot of great churches and community organizations that help out. Here, being in the radio station business, we see a lot of fundraisers. People are helping raising money for medical, funeral expenses, things like that. And I know that not everyone out there attends church, and a lot of people don't know how to even start a fundraising effort.
Right.
Some people will start a GoFundMe page. Some people don't know how to do that. If there was a central location, if somebody could say, go to this location and they can walk you through how to raise funds, I think that would be a huge asset
I think it would too.
To our community.
And when we talk about these solutions, I want to talk about this real quick before we go to, is you always run across those, as my daughter says, those negative Nancy's that are out there, that wants to talk about why you can't do this or why you shouldn't do it and all those kind of things. But, we must be realistic about the fact of, when we start these community-based events and try to help people, there will be those that will take advantage.
Right.
There will be those who will play a system, who really don't want to change things or don't want help or don't want to get clean off drugs. They just want to come take advantage of whatever they can take advantage of. And we understand that. We know that will happen. But going back to what I said before, if we take, say, even a third of the people that shows up that truly does get help, that gets clean off drugs, that gets back on their feet, that gets a job and starts paying taxes and become productive citizens of Cherokee County, even if we take a third of those people, that would be a great impact on the county.
Absolutely.
That would be a huge impact on helping our county get cleaned up. It would help on the criminal activity in the county. It would help on a lot of different aspects of the county, of just trying to make our county a better place and helping people get back on their feet. I mean, what would you rather do? Would you rather leave things like they are and the sheriff's office or the police departments go out and arrest people for misdemeanor use of drugs and paraphernalia and put them in the county jail over there where we have to feed them and keep them up, and we do all these things and they make bond and they get back out and you're picking them up again and putting them back in jail? Or do we want to come up with solutions that we can spend the same kind of money and the same amounts of money on feeding people, but helping them get back on their feet and where they can get a job and where they can be employed and where they can pay taxes back into the county and pay taxes back into the system? And then when they do that, then we have more resources to go around. And like I say, even if we do a third of them, that would be a huge impact.
If that many lives can be changed just in their lives, it trickles down to their family too.
Right.
Just a better experience for their kids.
Breaks
their
the
family
cycle.
members.
It breaks the
does.
generational cycles.
We hear all too often about the revolving door, that people get arrested, get out on bond, do the same thing, come back.
Right.
It's just a rinse repeat type thing with shampoo.
It is.
And so if there's some kind of solution there to keep them from repeating that same behavior,
Right.
I think our community is going to be all for it.
Right. And I think it's just going to take education. It's going to take a community effort. This is nothing we're going to come up with an idea today and then next week everything's going to be fixed. This is something that's going to take some planning. It's going to take some time. We're going to have to put this thing together. And really the things that we're talking about today, with all likelihood, we're talking about something at least a year down the road, year and a half down the road before we'll ever see it come to fruition.
I think you made the comment last week, and you said it before. If all the churches were to do everything they're supposed to do,
right,
then we would have no need for a welfare system.
We wouldn't. And like I say, I know that everyone is impacted on the economy. I understand that, and I understand that everyone, is kind of struggling, for lack of better terms. But the fact of the matter is, I think we've kind of gotten away from looking out for each other.
Right.
And used to, if we had a neighbor that we knew was down on their luck, or had a neighbor that had lost their job or whatever, the community kind of rallied around that. And as garden time come in, brought vegetables, brought food, brought all these things to kind of help as a church activity, kind of help this neighbor get back on their feet. But we've turned into a society where most of the time we don't even know who our neighbors are,
right?
Much less what they're going through or what their needs are. On my road that I grew up on, I could tell you everybody that lived on that road and kind of where they worked and their family and their kids and all those kind of things. But even today on that same road, I probably couldn't tell you half the people that lives on that road and what their names are. But it's just the way society has gotten, that we don't look out for each other the way we used to look out for each other.
I think a lot of people are raised on fear now. Don't talk to those neighbors because you never know what they're going to do.
Right.
I know a lot of fear. It makes a difference in getting to know people that live near you, but it's always good to know who they are.
It is. And used to also, with your neighbors and things, it was kind of people who were born and raised here that grew up here, so you kind of knew them, their family, kind of thing. But in recent years, we've had so many people move into the area from other places. I think that also brought a little bit of fear to people because it's not local people that you've grown up with that it's strangers that's living next door now.
I grew up in Hanging Dog, and everybody up and down my road is just all family members.
Right.
So of course we were able to walk up and down the road,
right,
and visit Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Dory.
Well, I can remember, honestly, I can remember as a kid going to Gatlinburg or going to the beach or going to wherever my family going and being gone for a few days or a week, and be summertime and Mom leave the windows up and never lock the doors or anything, be gone for a week at a time and never even lock the door while you was gone. But society's changed.
Right.
Things have changed now.
And as you mentioned last week, a lot of churches do a lot of great things, feed the
yeah.
community. There's a lot of
They
other
certainly
organizations out there that are not churches that also do. And you had suggested pooling all those resources together into a central location, and that would help people who need help. I remember when I was in second grade, my teacher was Jeannie Gaddis, and she held up a phone book, and she says, "You know what this is? This is a phone book." Okay. Back then we knew what phone books were because we all used them. We didn't have Google back then. She goes, it's not important to know every single number in this phone book. You can't memorize A to Z, but it's important to know where to find the information.
Right.
And that stuck with me so much.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, that makes sense. I don't have to memorize everybody's number. Just look it up.
Right.
And so that's something that I thought of when I heard you talking last week about if there's just one place that people go to and get the help they need.
Right. And like I say, you don't have to have all the solutions, but you know where to go to try to find those solutions.
Absolutely. For those organizations that do want to help out and make this thing a reality, who can they call?
Probably just call me and let me know, because this is kind of, really honestly, it's kind of my brainchild that I've come up with this. And we really don't have anything concrete or anything in order at this time. We're just trying to put resources together. Once we can kind of figure out about financially about where the grants are available and what they're entailed, and kind of getting our county government involved in that, about getting some feedback from them as to what they would like to see or not see out of it, then we can make a better decision about where to proceed, where to go forward with this. One of the things I also like to put out there to let people know, and I know we're probably running a little bit long today, but one of the things I want to let people also know is this is not something that I can do myself at the sheriff's office. This is not anything that, that one person can do anywhere from any other agency. The county manager can't do it from his seat, from his point of view. It's really going to take someone in the community who has a passion and a heart for this, that's hearing what's going on and hearing what we're trying to do, that will step up to the plate and say, hey, for example, I'm retired. I don't have anything else to do. I would really like to try to help out with this. I would really like to try to head this up, and I would really like to be the contact person for this, that can kind of be the go-to person that everybody can kind of come to, that can formulate the meetings, can put the pieces together, that can help apply for the grants or get all those kind of things together. We're really looking for that somebody that's out there that would step up to the plate and come in and say, hey, I think this is a good idea. You've sold me on it. I'm buying into this. So I would like to step up and do what I can to head this up and to help you with it. So that's kind of the thing that we're looking for at this point, is that contact person that God's troubling about this, or that somebody's had a burden about this, and maybe somebody that's worked in this field or worked with the homeless before, that might want to just step up and say, hey, I think I'm in the right place at the right time, and I think this is for me. And so that's kind of what we're looking for at this point.
It sounds like an idea that is not going to hurt, but only just help our community as a whole.
Right.
So I'm excited to see how this grows.
I am too. I'm anxious.
All right. Well, I see we are out of time. So
About 10 minutes ago.
just a little bit. We get to talking, and we continue.
Right.
All right. Well, Sheriff, we certainly do appreciate
you
taking the time, and we'll do this again real soon.
I'll see you
All
then.
All right. It's WKRK Radio in Murphy, North Carolina, cable TV channel 25, worldwide at country.am. When it's time to redo your floors, or if you need flooring for a new home, it's time for Carpet Mart in Murphy. They are the oldest floor covering business in the area. They have the latest colors, designs, and textures in carpets, beautiful warm hardwood, easy care laminate, area rugs, and so much more. Whether your home is a cozy cottage or a large family home, it deserves floors from Carpet Mart, 1395 Highway 64 West, Murphy, making quality flooring affordable for 4 decades. Bill and Barbara Cook invite you to stay tuned for Pastor Odd Brown from the Little Brasstown Baptist Church program. That's coming next right here on WKRK.